The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Your mother stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, her hair pinned back neatly as she flipped through a stack of documents while stirring something in a pan. "Morning, sweetheart," she said without looking up, her voice soft but distracted. You smiled faintly, sliding onto one of the stools at the counter. "Morning, Mom." Your mother was always like this, multitasking before the day had even properly begun. She was a businesswoman through and through, strong, sharp, and endlessly hardworking. Ever since your father passed away years ago, she carried the weight of the household alone, building her company from the ground up while raising you. "Are you working today too?" you asked, resting your chin on your hand as you watched her. She hummed, shuffling her papers before finally glancing at you. "I have a meeting downtown. It shouldn't take long, but I might be back late. You'll be okay here?" You nodded quickly, though the loneliness was always there, creeping in during weekends like this. "Yeah, I'll just stay home. Maybe study, maybe read." Your mom's expression softened for a brief moment, her strong facade cracking just enough to show the guilt she often carried. She reached over, brushing a hand against your cheek. "I'm sorry I'm not around as much." You caught her hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to apologize, Mom. You're doing everything for us. For me." Her lips curved into a faint smile before she pulled back, slipping into her blazer as her phone buzzed insistently on the counter. You were halfway through your coffee when your mom's voice pulled you out of your thoughts. "Oh, before I forget," she began, slipping her laptop into her bag. "My business partner's son will be arriving this evening. You remember Jungkook, right?" The mug almost slipped from your fingers. Jungkook. The name alone made your pulse quicken, memories flooding back like an old song you couldn't forget. His laugh, his sharp jawline, the way he used to casually mess up his hair. He was the boy you had liked since forever, though you had never confessed. To everyone else, he was simply your mom's partner's son. Charming, talented, always a little out of reach. To you, he was everything. "Jungkook?" you stammered, trying not to sound too obvious. "Yes," your mom smiled, completely unaware of the storm she had just stirred in your chest. "He's just come back from abroad. He has some work here, and since it'll take a while, he'll be staying with us for a few weeks." Your heart slammed against your ribs. "Stay with us? Under the same roof?" You swallowed hard, pretending to stay calm. "Oh, okay, that's fine." But your mother had already returned her attention to her phone, not noticing the way your cheeks heated or how you nervously tucked a strand of hair behind your ear. You pressed a hand to your chest, whispering to yourself, "Calm down, Yearnin. It's just Jungkook." But deep down you knew there was nothing just about Jungkook. Evening crept in faster than you expected, your stomach twisting with nerves as you paced around your room. You tried to act like you weren't waiting, like you weren't rehearsing how to greet him after so many years. But the truth was written all over you. Your flushed cheeks, the way you kept glancing at the mirror, fixing your hair again and again. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway nearly made you trip over your own feet. He was here. You hovered at the top of the stairs, heart pounding, as your mom opened the door with a warm smile. And there he was, Jungkook. Taller than you remembered, broad shoulders filling the doorway. His sharp features softened only by the polite smile he gave your mom. His hair was a little messy, his black t-shirt clinging to him like it was tailored just for him. He looked like every dream you had kept hidden, every wish you whispered to yourself late at night. "Welcome back, Jungkook," your mom greeted warmly. "Thank you, Mrs. Jung," he replied with that deep voice that made your knees weak. His luggage rolled in behind him, his presence filling the entire house in an instant. You forced yourself to step down the stairs, clutching the railing to steady your trembling legs. He looked up then, his gaze catching yours. For a second, just a second, it felt like time froze. "Why?" he said, his lips carving into the faintest smile. "You've grown up." Heat rushed to your cheeks, and you hated how small your voice sounded. "Hi, Jungkook." But his eyes lingered on you with a quiet knowing. He wasn't oblivious, he never had been. He knew the way you looked at him, the way your voice faltered when he was near. And yet, there was a certain restraint in his expression, a wall carefully built between you and him. Because while your heart screamed his name, Jungkook knew the truth. There was an age gap between you, big enough to call him uncle if you wanted to. You didn't, but the possibility was there, and it was enough for him to keep his distance. Days slipped into routine. You left for university in the mornings, your bag slung over your shoulder, while Jungkook disappeared into the world of sharp suits and serious business. But every day, every time you passed each other in the hallway, at the dining table, or by the door, something always happened. A glance that lingered a second too long, a brush of his shoulder against yours when there was plenty of space, his hand briefly steadying your arm when you nearly tripped on the stairs. Moments that seemed accidental, but left your stomach flipping. Yet, as much as you tried to break through, Jungkook remained carved from stone. His tone was always clipped, polite, but distant. Her mother had already left for an overseas business trip, the house falling into a quiet stillness without her presence. That meant it was just you and Jungkook, under the same roof, no watchful eyes, no interruptions, leaving the air charged with an unspoken tension neither of you dared to name aloud. Jungkook remained carved from stone. His tone was always clipped, polite, but distant. "Eat properly before you leave," he'd say, sliding a plate towards you without looking. "It's late. Go to bed," he muttered one night when he caught you scrolling your phone in the living room at 1 a.m. Cold, controlled, strict, he never crossed the invisible line he had drawn between you, and you hated it. Because you weren't the type of girl to sit quietly with your feelings. Not anymore. You had loved him too long in silence, and now that he was here, flesh and blood, living under the same roof, you weren't about to back down. So you started testing his walls, leaning a little too close when handing him the TV remote, letting your fingers brush his when he passed you a cup of water, holding his gaze just long enough to make him shift uncomfortably before looking away. One morning, as you stood by the door lacing up your shoes for class, you felt his presence behind you. That silent, heavy awareness you always got when he was near. "You're going out dressed like that?" His voice was calm but sharp, eyes narrowing slightly at your short skirt. You looked over your shoulder, boldness sparking in your chest. "Why? Don't I look good?" For the first time, his jaw tightened, his gaze flickering away like he couldn't allow himself to answer. A small smile tugged at your lips. Got him. But then he straightened, expression cold again. "Change, or I'll tell your mom." Your smirk faltered. "You wouldn't." "Try me." His eyes cut into yours, dark and unreadable. You exhaled, annoyed and strangely thrilled all at once. Every wall he built only made you want to climb higher. Every distance he forced only made you want to close it. Because you knew one thing for certain. No matter how strict, how cold, how untouchable he tried to be, Jeon Jungkook felt something too. Breakfast had turned into yet another battlefield. You sat across from Jungkook at the dining table, pouting as you poked at your food. "Why do you always act like you're my dad?" you muttered under your breath. His eyes snapped up, sharp and strict. "Because someone has to. Your mom trusted me to look after you while she's gone, and I won't let anything happen under my watch." You huffed dramatically, crossing your arms. "You're so boring, cold, bossy, serious, all the time." "Because someone has to be," he repeated firmly. His tone final, though the faintest twitch in his jaw betrayed the irritation you always managed to spark in him. You glared at him, leaning back in your chair. "Fine, be serious. I don't care." You stood abruptly, your chair scraping back as you stormed toward the indoor pool, your steps exaggerated to show him just how angry you were. Jungkook sighed, running a hand over his face. He knew you were being dramatic again, but when it came to you, he could never fully let his guard down. Then it happened. Splash. The splash echoed sharply in the quiet house, and before Jungkook could even process, your voice pierced the air. "Help! Jungkook, I can't swim!" His blood ran cold. In that split second, every wall, every ounce of restraint he had built, crumbled under raw instinct. Without thinking, he ripped off his jacket and dove straight into the pool. The water closed over his head, cool and heavy, but all he cared about was reaching you. His hands found your arm, pulling you up to the surface. "Yin." His voice was fierce as he wrapped an arm tightly around you. "I've got you. Don't panic." You clung to him instantly, arms locking around his neck, legs curling around his like a lifeline. Your cheek pressed against his soaked shoulder, your voice trembling. "Jungkook, don't let me go." He held you tighter, guiding you toward the corner of the pool, his body shielding yours. His breath was ragged, his heart pounding against your chest. You could have, he snapped, his voice sharp but shaken, betraying how much the sight of you struggling had terrified him. But as he looked at you, your wet lashes, the curve of your lips pulling into the faintest smile, something in his chest tightened. And then it hit him. You weren't drowning. You had been pretending. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing. The realization cut through him, leaving a storm brewing in his chest. You're reckless, he snapped, his voice sharp, chest rising and falling against yours. Pretending you were drowning? Do you even understand how dangerous that was? You looked up at him through wet lashes, your lips curving into the faintest smirk. I knew you'd save me. His jaw tightened. That's not the point. You're too young for this, too young to play games you don't understand. But you refused to back down. You leaned in closer, your boldness burning through his icy composure. Maybe I understand more than you think. His chest rose sharply, and after a beat, he finally opened his eyes. Dark, tired, but softer than you'd ever seen them. His hand came up to cup your cheek, thumb brushing across your lips. He held your gaze, his jaw tight, as though the words hurt to say, but then his voice broke, raw and low. If I didn't love you, 𝐲𝐻𝐭, we wouldn't be here. The world seemed to still. Your eyes blurred with tears as you pressed your forehead to his. Say it again. His brushed yours, trembling but firm. I love you. The confession hung in the morning light, fragile yet undeniable.